Hello and welcome to Wisdom Bites. Hope you're well. Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. And in today's packed program, I'm going to be having a look at a question which is on everybody's mind, and that is, how will this Bitcoin bull market come to an end? With the Brexit indicators looking as though they're not going to be triggered in this particular cycle, as we've seen, as per the historical perspective, then it's a good idea to have a look at exactly how the previous cycles ended in terms of certain candlestick patterns to give us some idea of how the current bull market will end. We'll also be having a rundown of the various timeframes for Bitcoin to make head or tail about the short-term price changes with Bitcoin, as well as the medium term and the targets where Bitcoin could possibly go to. We'll also be having a look at the Bitcoin price through the eyes of the weekly cycles as well as the 60-day cycle. So if that sounds interesting, you know what to do. Get yourself a cup of tea, sit yourself down, eyes on the screen, and let's get cracking. Okay, we're going to go straight into our main theme of the video and look at the various candlestick patterns that usually develop towards the end of any bull market. And these are the signs and signals that we should be looking out for now that we're in the time band of coming to the end of a Bitcoin bull run. It could be in a few weeks, it could be in a few months, but it's something that we should all be aware of. It's something that I shared with the private members a few videos ago, so it's something that they found very useful. I'm hoping that everybody else will find it useful as well. So what we've got on the screen here, these are the pi cycle lines, the green and the red lines. In the past, as we've seen many times, we would have been expecting the green line to cross above the red line. And now that we're in the final stretch of the bull market, if indeed we are going to close at the end of this year, it's highly unlikely that the green line is going to get very much closer to the red line, let alone cross it like it has done in the last 3 cycles. And if we look at the Maya multiple, which we would have expected to be much higher at this stage, it's at 1.17, and you can see with the green line, this is where we would normally expect for this to come. And if I squeeze this a little bit, you'll see that we're nowhere near. So many of the Brexit indicators that we were hoping would be able to help us to get out of the bull market, for those who want to do so, that is, of course, at the end of this 4-year cycle, then the traditional signals don't seem to be the ones that are going to be able to help us. So I was looking for something else that may help the subscribers here. And that is, we're going to have to look at some candlestick patterns that have developed at each of the previous cycles. And with the candlestick patterns, it's always going to be the same case. They're always going to be reliable because obviously they're dependent on the price action topping out at the very top. So the signs will be there with the candlestick patterns. I'm going to start off with the first cycle. The yellow line here is designating the top of the bull market in November 2013. And this candlestick pattern has a running theme, usually at the top of a bull market. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to end up looking at when you come towards the end of the bull market. Please always remember, if you don't want to be disappointed with getting off the bull market train, if indeed you want to do so, you have to expect that you will not be able to get off right at the very top. It's just something that you just can't do. It could happen by luck, but by design, it's impossible to do. So don't set yourself up for disappointment if you can't get off at the very top. But these are the types of patterns you're going to have to look for, because these are the kinds of things that usually happen at the top of the bull market. So what you have here that ended the bull market in 2013 is that you've got on the left hand side a solid green candle, in the middle you've got a very small bodied candle, and on the other side you've got a red solid body candle. And altogether this 3 candle pattern forms what we call an evening star pattern. So if you want to ask the question, what is it? You can see quite clearly it's a bearish reversal candlestick pattern consisting of 3 candles, a large bullish candlestick, a small bodied candle, and a bearish candle. And they appear at the top of a price trend, signifying that the uptrend is nearing its end. So this is it. It's a very common pattern that you'll see at the end of many trends, not just the end of a bull market. So that's the first pattern you'll see, and this occurred at the end of the first bull market in 2013. If we move on to the 2017 end of the bull market, you can see it's a very similar pattern. We saw a strong green candle on one side, 2 small bodied candles here. So this is what you call an extended evening star pattern, and then the red Marubozu candle here. So if we see this, there's a high likelihood that the market is about to top. Now if you look left here, we did get a very similar pattern at this point. So this could have been a little bit of an early end to the bull market, but even if you got out here, as you were going up at this point, even if you got out at the end of this candle, this completed an evening star pattern. So you would have got out at around about 16,000 rather than 20,000. So your exit would have been on this candle, which would have confirmed this evening star pattern. and that would have been at around about 17,600. So far what we've got is 2 evening star patterns at the end of each of the Bitcoin bull markets. Okay, if we move on to the November 2021 topping out for Bitcoin, I'm looking at this one because this was in the time band that we would have expected the end of the bull market. Just like the current cycle, we're right in the time band where we can expect the Bitcoin bull market to end. So now you can see that this pattern repeated one more time. You've got a solid green candle, small bodied candle, and then you've got the outside red candle. So this evening star pattern one more time, repeated for the 3rd time. And at this point, if you were to follow this pattern, then you would have got out at the close of that candle, and that would have been at 65,000. So instead of 69, you would have got it at 65,000. If you look left here, there is another pattern that you need to be looking out for, which is this one here. And that is that at the top of a trend, if you get an outside bar bearish engulfing candle like this one here, where you've got the red candle totally engulfing and surpassing the previous green candle, this is also a sign. So, and this would have been at 62,000 on the close of that one. So the question everybody will be asking is, what happens if we don't get an evening star reversal pattern this time around? Well, there are other ones that are available. Apart from the evening star is this one here. Some people call this the gravestone doji candle. Others call it the bearish pin bar. So at the top of a trend, you get this candle, which is telling you that there's a rejection of higher prices at that point, and this is more than likely going to come down. So that's the second most important candle that I always find, which ends most of the uptrends. The other one to really look out for is this one here, the bearish engulfing candle, where at the top of a trend you get a solid green candle on the left hand side, and that's usually overpowered by a stronger red candle on the other side, and which totally engulfs the previous green candle. So this is usually a good sign that the market is coming to a top. The other one, which is quite common, although it says here bullish pin bar, but if you get this kind of a candle here, which people call a hangman candle or a reversal hammer candle, at the top of a trend, at the bottom of a trend, this is actually very bullish. So depending on where you get it, and obviously at the end of a bull market run, we would be expecting this kind of a pattern to be at the top of a trend. And if you see this, that's another very strong sign that we're going to come to an end of the bull market. So there you have it, a few patterns to look out for, tell us exactly how this bull market is going to end. And of course, with the private members, I look at these things every single day and do a market update every single day so that we're always on top on a daily basis so that we don't miss anything. Okay, if you watched my video from last week, I just want to continue the theme of exactly where we left off. I did this video called "We Have the Signal for the Start of a Blow Off Top, and are you ready for it?" So that was last Monday. So we're going to have a look at exactly what's happened since then and make sense of what is going to currently happen based on the charts through the eyes of the various time frames and the 60-day cycle as well as the weekly cycle. And also have a look at some of the targets that I've got actually mapped out here for you. So last Sunday, what we got was this very strong Marubozu green candle at the bottom of a trend. And as I've just shown you with the evening star pattern, the reverse of that is the morning star pattern. So what we got here was a strong red candle on the left-hand side, 2 small-bodied candles, and the sign that I was talking about last week was this green candle that completed the extended morning star pattern here. So this was a very strong signal that we're now going to go into a final stretch of the bull market. And since then, as you can see, what's happened is that we've had, after this candle closed here, we've had a 12% rise, and in the process of all that, we've taken out the 124,000 all-time high. So you can see quite clearly we went to a high of around about 125,700, and we've got a very strong bullish trend which seems to be going much higher, and I'm going to give you the price targets in a minute. But what I want to do is just go through some of the time frames, because in the process of what's happened last week, we've had a monthly close, so we really need to take that into account to build up our narrative going forward with Bitcoin. So this is a September candle here, which closed last week, and currently we're moving to the upside. Now, always remember that at any one point, there's always going to be a bearish narrative. And we should always keep that in mind, because at the end of the day, we want to remain open, fluid, and flexible and not dismiss any particular narrative. So some people would say this is a triple top here. one top here, one top there, and now currently we're at this point. And of course, everything is possible, but as we'll see through the eyes of the weekly and the daily cycles, the higher probability is that we're going to be starting to move to higher levels. But the good thing about the monthly chart here is that we did get a tweezer top here, so we would have had an expectation of a rundown to lower levels. However, being in the time band of the 4-year cycle, this is the time when these types of signals get ignored. And this is what I've been mentioning over the last many videos, that I would still expect this to move to the upside because of the time band we're in. So we've now got a nice solid October candle, which in the last 13-14 years has usually provided us with the biggest returns. And of course, our old friend, the 8 exponential moving average, the blue line here. So we're obviously well above it. So the trend on the monthly is still to the upside. So we should be expecting this to be ending this month with a good solid green candle, and even the next one we may well be expecting that one to be, but we'll have to just keep monitoring what the price is doing on the lower time frames. And if we move on to the weekly time frame, a very important development here, because what you saw yesterday, the weekly close here was the highest close at this point, around 123,500. So this is the highest close that we've ever had with Bitcoin. So this is telling you very strongly that we're in a bullish phase, the final stretch being a very strong bullish phase of the cycles. And as you can see with the blue line, the 8 exponential moving average, we've recaptured that now here, having lost it the previous week. And as we understand the weekly cycles as well as the 60-day cycles, this was an important development because this is now marking the beginning of the 26 weekly cycle. So we'll have a look at Bitcoin through the weekly cycle. So this is the time frame and the template for the weekly cycles as we understand them. So what we've done now with this candle close on the weekly yesterday is that we've now confirmed this to be the end of the previous weekly cycle. So the cycle that started here back in April, and we were expecting it to end with this red line here. We're right on it at the moment, but the strong Marubozu candle yesterday confirms that we've now come to the end of the weekly cycle here. And this is now the beginning of it. And as you saw, at the beginning of the 26 weekly cycle, this is where you get the most powerful moves. And so this is where I would expect with a higher probability to move very much to the higher side in an explosive manner. And as we've seen with the daily candles, since last week, we've made very strong progress and we've got our explosive move, which is ongoing currently. So the question is, where does this 26 weekly cycle end? So if this is the end of the previous 26 weekly cycle, we need to move the red line to this candle, take this one out, and then measure 26 weeks from there, which will take us to at this point. So we now need to move this red line to the end of the current 26 weekly cycle, which will now be at the end of March. So what are our expectations here? So if you've been following my cycles updates, we're now in the first of the 3 60-day cycles, which are contained within these 26 weekly cycles. So this is the framework of the 26 weekly cycles. Within them, you get 3 60-day cycles here. And the first of those 60-day cycles, as we'll see when I look through the 60-day cycle template, is the most explosive move. And remember that in the halfway stage, we need to make a high before then, and then a high after that will give us the right translated cycle, which will tell us with a higher probability that we're going to be moving to higher levels. So what I need to do now is to put in the halfway marker between this red line and this red line. So remember, it's 26 weeks, so 13 weeks from here will give us the halfway stage, and that's going to be at the end of December. So what I'm expecting here is that wherever we go to between now and the end of the first 60-day cycle, which is this green line here, obviously there's going to be oscillations along the way, but as long as we make some sort of a high, we would be expecting a mid-cycle decline in the weekly cycle. And if the market hasn't topped out in November, because the likelihood is that there is a possibility that we're going to top out. When we have a look at the 60-day cycles, you'll understand this a bit better, but there is a likelihood that we could top out in November or in January. But from a weekly cycles perspective, what we're really expecting now is that if we're going to get a right translated cycle, then whatever high we make here, then a run down into the midpoint, then we should then make a higher high from the first part of the 26 weekly cycle. And if that is the case, then the chances are we're going to top out somewhere in January. So the two possible dates for the end of the current bull market, if indeed we do come to the end between now and January 2026, then November and January are the ones that have the higher probability. And of course, as I've mentioned many times, if we do get an extended cycle, then obviously we'll just have to keep monitoring it. But these are the two possible dates for the time being if we do finish the Bitcoin bull market in the traditional way we have done in the first, second and the third cycles. So this is where we're at with the 26 weekly cycles. We're expecting some sort of a high now of an explosive move in the first part of the 26 weekly cycle, like we got in the first part of the cycle last time, and then we'll see where we get to. And we can look at the daily cycles to give some sort of an idea on a shorter term time basis. Okay, so if you've been watching my videos, you'll know that we've been following these 60-day cycles, and it seems to have played out exactly how these cycles should have played out. And that is that these were our expectations, that when we came to the end of the previous cycle here on day 59, we made a high at this point. And in our mid-cycle decline, unfortunately, what happened was that we fell below and closed well below the start of the cycle. This told us that this was going to be a failed cycle, which then took this off the table, that because of the failed cycle, it was unlikely that we're going to go and retest this 124 in the second half of the current 60-day cycle. Now, what we've done since then, obviously, was when I mentioned last week with the morning star pattern here, the signal that started the final stretch of the bull market with this morning star pattern, once we've bottomed out, we should see an explosive move. And this is exactly what we've got here. And we're still continuing that. Let's see how far that goes. So the question now is, what happens from where we are to the end of the current 60-day cycle now, which is going to be 24th of November. So you can see how these cycles work really, really well. Because of the failed cycle nature, that triggered our three targets here, which was 113, 116 and 118. And this is exactly where it came to, the top target of 118. And then we had a rundown and we had these two targets here of 111 and 109. And we actually bottomed out at 108. So you can see how these cycles are really quite accurate in giving us some sort of a good outline and a guidance of where the price for Bitcoin may go. So what are these cycles telling us now? If you want to use a Fibonacci retracement from the previous high, which was here at 117,900, to the bottom where the cycle ended, you can see quite clearly it's come to the 1.618, 124,000. Obviously, we're now taking that out to 125,000. So the next target based on this here would be around about the 130,000 mark. But as I'll show you with the other targets, 128 seems a very likely point. So anywhere between 128 and 130 is where I would expect this to be at the point of where we expect the mid-cycle decline, which is a white line here. So this is what the cycles are telling us. So we are now currently on day 11 of the new cycle. And what we would expect is for the first 20 days approximately, please remember these are not exact amounts, and never expect certainties or guarantees with anything. We are in a game of probability. So everything I do is always based on the probability element. So we're on day 11. And we should expect a few more days yet. And what we should do is to expect a few more days, possibly running into that 128, 130,000 target, and then expect some sort of a pullback into the midpoint. And the most sensible point to find support at the end of that decline would be, of course, so the old 124 neckline here. So this is what I would expect, moving up towards the 128, 130, and then a decline into that resistance point of 124, and then finding that as a very strong support for the second half of the 60-day cycle. And so once again, from this point, wherever that's going to be, and we've always got that flexibility of 10 or 15 days either side of these points. So wherever we have this decline, then we've got another run of around about 20 days before we see the decline towards the end of the cycle. Now, the possibility here, and the most important part, is that this could be the end of the bull market. So it's at this point we should be looking out for something like an outside bar engulfing candle or an evening star pattern or a gravestone doji candle, but certainly something which gives us a bearish indication that the market is topping out. So this is a very high possible point where the end of the bull market might be. And so that's going to be somewhere around about the November time. And for the private members on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a particular calculation which is going to give them an exact date which that particular calculation is giving for the end of the bull market. And of course, there's many calculations you can do, but on that particular calculation, it's just giving us a good guidance that possibly that around that particular date, it doesn't have to be on that date, of course, because nobody knows the future, nobody has their crystal ball, but around about that exact date, we should be looking out for some sort of a pattern for the topping out. So this is the first probable top that we're going to see, and the next opportunity would probably be in January. Okay, so what I've done is I've used various methods to identify certain targets that we can expect going forward. So what I've done is I've used the Fibonacci retracement tool, which is this one here, but I've also used a trend-based Fibonacci extension to put in here some of the targets. So I've done it from various tops and various bottoms to give you some of these targets, which all should be hit, and at around those points you should see some sort of either consolidation or pullbacks for Bitcoin to recharge and move forward for the next leg. So for your information, if you want to mark these up, these are the targets that I've actually got. As I mentioned here, the first white line is at 128,000. And as we saw with the 60-day cycle, the next target is 130,000. So this looks like a high probable point before we move into the mid-cycle decline. And then after that, the next target would be at around about the 132,000, and then your 136 and then 140,000. And I would expect in the second half of the current 60-day cycle, we should get up to around about the 140,000. And that's going to be, according to how this is working out, to be in around about November. So this point here, and possibly up to here, depending on how quickly we'll move up. As we know, at the end of a bull market, we do get some very strong green candles. So those strong candles can actually move right into some of these higher levels. And our previous target for the end of the bull market was around 170,000. And it's at this point here. So depending on how strong the trend that we get, anywhere between around about 140 and 170 is where I would expect the price to be in mid-November. But you can see that the Fibonacci levels are giving us some of these points as well at 150, which is a round number. So this is quite a high probable level, as well as 152. And then this one here, 158. And that 165. And then the target that we've got is around about 170 to 175. So these are the targets that I've been looking at using the Fibonacci tool. But obviously, as we go on week by week, we can monitor some of these targets. And I'm going to leave these lines on there to see how far we can reach. And one of the main reasons that's going to be driving Bitcoin to higher prices is that the target rate probability for the October meeting on the 29th of October, there's a strong possibility of an interest rate cut from the current level of 4.0 down to 3.75. And this rate cut hasn't been priced in yet. The current move that we've got here was really the one for the September rate cut, because before the September rate cuts, Bitcoin was actually coming down into the end of the 60-day cycle. So this is really playing out for the September cut, and for the October cut, we should expect higher prices. If you look at the December figures, we've now got also 85% rate of probability to reduce the interest rates by a further 25 basis points down to 3.5%. So what we've now got is a high probability of 25 basis points cut for November and December. So we've got a clear run, at least until November, for Bitcoin to go to much higher levels. So what we've now got is really an incredible alignment of bullish signals to give us a highly bullish narrative going forward. So as you can see here, the interest rates are telling us that the Bitcoin is going to be pulled to much higher levels. The 60-day cycle has just begun, and we should get a clear run into November and see where and how far the Bitcoin price can go. So that can be anywhere between 140 to 170. So that's showing a very bullish narrative. And on the weekly cycles, we've just started the new weekly cycle, which, as we've seen at the beginning, in the first section of the 26 weekly cycle, we can expect an explosive move within the first 60-day cycle of that 26 weekly cycle time frame. We've also got the tightening of the Bollinger Bands, which should play out to the upside. And we've also got the breakout of the inverse head and shoulders pattern. Okay, before I go, in case people wanting to join the private membership where we cover Bitcoin on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, we do these daily updates. As you can see from this one last week on the Friday, this was the last update last week. And you can see the kinds of things that we cover. If you're interested in this kind of thing, we cover both Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, which is our speciality. But we also do 2 members videos on a Wednesday and a Saturday covering various topics for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. And the last video that we did on Saturday was looking at the dangers of adding positions in the current last stretch of the bull market. I know from last week, as I mentioned, that we do have a full membership, and what we were operating was that every time one member leaves, another new member can join. But because last week many people who attempted to join the membership were not able to join, what I've done is I've increased the number of extra spaces now by another 25. So you're welcome to join the growing band of the private members here. And if you want to know what the kind of things that we do in the membership, below any of my videos you'll see there's a new members introduction video, so that'll give you an insight into what we do before you commit yourself. Have a look at that video to see if it's of interest to you. And if it is, below all of my videos you've got this join button, and if you're on a handheld device you may have to go into the description box where there's this one here, Bitcoin Miners membership join link. If you press the red button here, and you'll get this box. For the price of 1 coffee per week at £12.99, you can join the channel and you can cancel at any time. So even if you want to have a look for a month or what have you, to see if it adds value to you, there's no obligation or any contract. So you're welcome to join, and I've opened up another 25 spaces for you. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I hope you found value in the video. If you did, then please do remember to like and to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you've got any comments, leave them in the comments below. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.